Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc on Tuesday, October 24th at 5 p.m. Tonight is a council workshop. We have the service delivery review, current state report presented. I'm just going to do one little thing, just because I think it's appropriate. I'm going to read our mission statement. We serve the communities of Strathroy-Caradoc by delivering modern municipal services, proactively planning for the future, of facilitating partnerships that advance our goals. I just thought that appropriate to read. Roll call, CAO McKibben is absent with a family matter. Councillor Derbyshire will be late with a farm matter, so he will be here. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, a motion that the October 1st, 2024 council workshop agenda be approved as circulated. Councillor Pelkman, second by Councillor Hippel. Favor? Carried. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping matters. I'm just going to ask council to be very cognizant aware of the fact there are maybe some sensitive staffing matters that may, have identifiable individuals. Those can be discussed in closed when we get there. I'm just asking to be very sensitive and cognizant of that fact. And then let's hold all questions until after the presentation. So with that, I'm going to ask the motion of the service delivery review current state report be received for information. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. With that, and Julie, I'm going to ask you to formally introduce your team, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council, on behalf of our team at Strategy Corp, thank you for having us here today to present the current state report and for engaging our firm to conduct the service delivery review. To my left, I have Komal Ayub, senior consultant. To my right, managing principal, Chris Loretto. And just beside Chris is Nabiha Chowdhury, and senior consultant with our firm.
Thank you.
And I am Julie Gagnon, director.
And you're Julie Gagnon. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your worship, through you to council. If we could just skip right ahead to slide 4. We are thrilled to be here to walk you through a current state report and to take a moment to discuss some of the opportunities that are presented within the report. I recognize that this report has been included in the council agenda and is something that you have had access to for a number of days. So we will assume that you have read the majority of the report. I recognize it's lengthy, but keeping that in mind, we won't be going through slide by slide. But if there are slides that you would like some additional clarity on, please do let us know, and we'll do our best to address that. So in terms of project background, Strategy Corp has been engaged to work in partnership with your municipality to conduct a service delivery review. Part of that service delivery review is a core services review where we are taking a look at discretionary and core services and mandatory services as well. We are specifically focused on looking at ways to modernize service delivery to prepare for anticipated growth, reduce costs where possible, and optimize service use without compromising service quality, because we know that that is something that is incredibly important to your council and to your community. So why are we here today? We are here to present initial opportunities that have come out of extensive research that we have done, including a thorough analysis of data and documents that were provided by the project team and each department within the municipality. We conducted extensive engagement with your team here at the municipality, specifically at kind of the senior leadership level, as well had one-on-ones with members of council, and engaged all staff across the municipality through a survey and the community through a community survey as well. And we're thrilled to report that the community was very interested in this service delivery review, and we had in excess of 850 responses, which for us is a really great response rate doing this work in a number of municipalities across the province. So we are here to introduce you to over 30 potential opportunities for validation and kind of a deeper dive as we progress through this project in phases 3 and 4. So that includes 20 enterprise-wide or across the organization type opportunities, as well as 15 department-specific opportunities. And we'll dig into those in just a moment. So what this is not the final report. We're quite a ways away from having that final report. This is, in essence, a summary of what we heard through that engagement and the research that we undertook and how we understand your context and the situation here in Strathroy-Caradoc. So we focus on those current findings and potential opportunities for optimization, and we'll be looking to Council to help prioritize and validate each of those opportunities. So this does not consider any of the financial impacts associated with each of these. You're essentially going to send us back and say, here are our top 7 priorities. Do a deeper dive on these. We recognize this bucket is very important. Please take a look at those, etc. I think you get the point there. So the cost-benefit analysis associated with these opportunities is what comes next. So that's why this report is kind of elevated to a higher level, is to share with you what we heard. So phases 3 and 4, we'll be having some staff workshops and talking about things like customer service and the opportunities that Council has prioritized for us. And we plan to be back before Council with a final report in early November. So that's what you can look forward to. So in terms of our methodology and approach, I talked a bit about stakeholder engagement, but we also relied on scope methodology, which really, it's included in the report on slide 4, but it gives us a tool that helps us develop really actionable solutions that enhance productivity. And what this will involve in the final report is you're likely to see some redesigned processes, introducing some new technology, streamlining the way that you deliver some services. And that's just to give you some sense, but it really gets us to highly tailored solutions that are specific to your context. So if we could skip ahead, I'll just quickly talk about our progress to date. So this is a 4-phase project, and we are wrapping up the research and consultation phase, which is phase 2, and we'll be jumping into recommendations where we'll validate those opportunities. We will decide on an implementation plan and get a lot of insights into how that implementation planning might work in terms of costs and risks and mitigation strategies. And we'll be presenting those final recommendations for service improvements in November. So if we could keep skipping ahead. We have provided a snapshot of municipal services, which was included in your agenda, so we can just keep on skipping and provide context. I know Council is well aware of this, but for the purposes of public reporting, we did include some important statistics about Strathroy-Caradoc's projected growth, income levels, and employment strength, just to give folks a sense of the community that you serve. And if we could skip one more, Brianna, thanks. In terms of key takeaways, these are kind of the biggest bucket of themes that we heard. So Strathroy-Caradoc could benefit from a strengthened relationship between staff, council, and the community. And this needs to be firmly underpinned by trust. And to realize those shared goals, there has to be strategic alignment and enhanced communication. And this, I don't think, will come as a surprise to you. We heard it from staff, we heard it from council, and we heard it from the community. To meet resident expectations, there is a need to explore ways to enhance and improve customer service. And even I recall when we came and introduced the project in August, we heard that there was a need to strengthen customer service within the organization and out to the community as well. We also know that Strathroy-Caradoc's team is dedicated, and many of them live within the community and are proud to serve Strathroy-Caradoc. And we have also found, and though these are initial findings, that your structure is relatively lean, especially in some service areas. So there isn't a lot of fat to be cut, but we will be doing that analysis as part of our ongoing work. There are likely opportunities to enhance technology, resolve some paper-based processes that we see, and enhance HR support. There are opportunities for things like succession planning and targeted training, and a review of the organization and functional structures within the municipality. So again, just to recap, there's 20 enterprise-wide or across the municipality opportunities for your consideration, and 15 that pertain to specific departments. And with that, I'll ask Komal and Nabiha to walk you through the SWOT analysis.
Well, thank you, Julie. So folks, moving to the strengths and weaknesses and moving forward in terms of the strengths to opportunities and charting a path forward for the municipality. One of the strengths is really the commitment and competency of the staff. Also financial stability, long-term financial planning that has been taking place internally in terms of resource allocation. Also a strong civic pride and engagement, which was came through that survey, which we saw over 850 folks take up. The community feel that is provided through Strathroy-Caradoc, but also the big city amenities really make Strathroy-Caradoc an attractive location for individuals, emphasizing the community feel and the commitment to the community at large. Also, really recognizing the institutional knowledge that exists within the municipality amongst staff. Experienced and longstanding staff bring that institutional knowledge to the table, and that has really helped guide decision-making within the municipality. In terms of areas of improvement, collaboration and governance, there's a need for clear understanding of roles and responsibilities to really support movement forward. Additionally, internal communication, so communication that moves within from leadership to staff, perhaps from council to staff as well, does need to be improved just to streamline and to support clarity of information. Additionally, external communication is something that we heard through the survey. Your residents are very keen to receive information, to be engaged, and so we need to enhance that external communication that goes from the municipality to residents. Also, we recognize that there is a technology gap, so a need for improved technology and infrastructure, which is outdated, as well as a skill gap amongst select users to enhance the use of that technology that does exist. There's also a need for succession planning and knowledge management, ensuring that there is not a gap in services should there be resource shifting that goes on. Additionally, staff morale and engagement, while staff take great pride in their work, turnover in leadership, as well as poor communication and an absence of clear operational direction that is aligned with the corporate strategic plan has left staff feeling disconnected and overburdened at times. So really addressing that and increasing morale and engagement. We also saw an operational focus within leadership that perhaps is limiting strategic capacity of the municipality. Additionally, there's undocumented business processes, SOPs, that could be addressed to support enhancement. Additionally, a volume of council and committee meetings that creates increased workload for staff. There's also a resistance to change that we've observed, perhaps hesitancy for things to shift, adoption of new processes and technologies, as well as a lack of a consistent approach to project management that perhaps is creating some of that overworking and burden and workload. With that being shared, I'll pass it over to Nabiha to walk us through opportunities and threats.
Thank you, Komal. I'm going to be walking you through with the opportunities and threats. These are more external facing. To start off with opportunities, the first is residential growth. So Strathroy-Caradoc is the most populous municipality within the Middlesex County. As of 2021, makes up 31% of the county population. It's very appealing to retirees and individuals who are looking to relocate from urban centers, which basically means it's a really ideal destination for more new residential projects. The next opportunity is digital enablement. So as you know from the COVID-19 experience, municipalities had to really quickly turn over and make their services available online. As this post-COVID it's continued to become an ongoing need when it comes to online services. So when it comes to customer-facing services, there is a need to modernize them, improve the communication channels to your residents, and streamline internal procedures through digital transformation. Next is community dialogue and engagement. I think when we started this project, it was something we heard quite a lot that council is also really interested in engaging with the community more, and the survey, I think, really demonstrated that the feeling is mutual. The community also wants to engage with you more and be part of that decision-making process. So finding ways to incorporate their feedback and collaborate with them more to foster more communication, transparency, and accountability between the staff and residents, which will, and hopefully in the outcome, will be improving public trust and fostering more collaboration. And the last opportunity here is leverage support from Middlesex County. I know there's different areas within your municipality where you are using county support. There's further opportunities that we are interested in exploring to find ways where they can provide the support that you need and make it more streamline your processes, promote the best adoption of best practices, reduce costs and time, and ensure greater consistency in policies across lower tier municipalities. And you will notice that when we finally go through the opportunities, these 4 core things are somehow sprinkled across those as well, so they do align. Last but not least, the threats. I think this is something you're quite well aware of, and many of your neighboring municipalities probably feel the same way. Your sector's changing a lot. You're having to deal with maintaining these high quality services as you're experiencing population growth, but there being limited revenue sources. And there's also political constraints on your tax increases. And along with that, the province is wanting you to do more with a lot less. Next is your legacy of amalgamation. So in 2001, the amalgamation, it continues to present some challenges between the 2 wards when it comes to their distinct identities. So it is sometimes a bit challenging for you to build a cohesive identity as Strathroy-Caradoc. Next is evolving resident expectations. So naturally, when you're experiencing population growth, your population is becoming more diverse when it comes to age and ethnicity. With that comes their needs are also shifting. So again, having to do more with less, you also have to kind of change your services and approach to meet the broader spectrum of expectations. Next is mixed sentiments on growth. So there's a bit of a mix of some people want the growth and some people don't, but naturally it is something that is needed for the municipality. So having to manage those concerns as well. And sorry, I missed one of them, heightened public expectations. So one of the other things is when you're having new residents coming from urban large centers, they expect to get the same level of services, maybe from the greater Toronto areas, but of course moving to a smaller municipality has its perks, but again, having to do more with less, and sometimes they're not as understanding as you'd like them to be. Next is more recently, you've had staff turnover among senior administration and staff, which has raised some concerns among employees and residents. The municipality is really busy, so along with having a lot of high staff turnover, staff members across your organization is looking for more stability and needing a more consistent long-term strategic direction from the municipality. Aging infrastructure, so this is no exception to any other municipalities. As with many, you do have aging infrastructures that may pose a long-term risk. So any more like additional delays for maintenance or upgrades could lead to future cost or service disruption. So having to look at that in the long term in a more strategic way to prioritize accordingly. Last but not least, intergovernmental relations. So it is more and more the province is also getting involved with the day-to-day when it comes to the municipalities. There's also some federal impacts as well. It's of course naturally with your role you have to be pretty close to the different levels of government, but even more now. So if any of your relationships are strained or if there are any policy changes are introduced, it could negatively impact the municipality's capacity to manage those services while you're also trying to manage all other competing priorities. So just being a bit more mindful of that so you can be more proactive rather than reactive or taken by surprise, more changes coming your way from other levels of government. And I will stop there and turn it over to Julie.
Great, thanks. So the SWOT analysis is just another tool that we use to help us collect and collate all of the feedback that we heard and the research that we've done into the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And I did just want to point out, for the purposes of those who are online with us, that we have included information about the community survey and appreciate everyone's response to that survey. That's included in the appendix, as well information about the staff survey. And the SWOT does consider our conversations that we had with council staff and some external stakeholders, as well as our own observations. So now we can jump right into an overview of the enterprise-wide service delivery improvement opportunities. So there is a section that does break this down a little bit more and includes a bit more information, but we did want to provide you with a snapshot for the purposes of working through these opportunities with members of council. So in terms of those enterprise-wide opportunities, these are ones that are not necessarily specific to one department, but are likely to have an impact across the organization as a whole or bridge multiple departments. So they didn't belong with one specific service area. Instead, they're more kind of at the administrative level and ways to support modernization or improvements to services. So again, these are opportunities, not our recommendations, and we are looking for council to help us prioritize, what are the most important, what resonate the most with council in terms of the conversations that you have with constituents and your awareness of what's happening within the organization. So we're looking to prioritize some of them for a more in-depth analysis and review. So if we talked about service delivery in general, some opportunities that came through our engagement include establishing service level standards and a customer service policy. And this links to kind of some opportunities for improvement when it comes to responsiveness, managing resident expectations for how and when and who will be responding to their inquiries. And this was consistent feedback that we heard through multiple different sources, that there is a need to support customer service. So this is one lever or one mechanism that council could send us on our way to explore deeper is, what would that customer service policy look like for Strathroy-Caradoc? What would the service level standards look like, given what we have heard in terms of concerns? So that would also include key performance indicators, or KPIs, that would help council and staff measure their success in terms of responses and engagement with the community. So you're able to report those types of metrics back to the community to say, in the event that customer service continues to be an issue, well, we have improved year over year, and here are the metrics that we use to support this. Also under the bucket of service delivery, the benefits of implementing a customer engagement and communication strategy. So the first one is about setting those standards. When will we respond? And how will staff respond through this policy, and what supports are needed there? And what are council's expectations through that policy? And this next one is about how you will engage with residents and how you will communicate with them. And so this is a comprehensive strategy that some municipalities use to enhance resident expectation, or enhance resident experiences and manage expectations around communications. And that strategy tends to be a living document that council and staff revisit at a regular cadence to make sure that it is aligning with community expectations. The third one is investigating the benefits of a customer relations management software tool. So we are seeing this more and more in a lot of municipalities where there is essentially a database. So whoever takes that call from a resident is able to put it into a system, and then if that resident was to call because they didn't get an immediate response, they'll call another department and just keep calling, is what we've heard, until they get someone who picks up the phone. At least they can log in and say, I see that, my colleague in another department did return your call or forwarded this to me, but at least it provides a mechanism for enhanced customer service in that regard. So that's one area where we thought we could provide you with more information about how that might work in practice and how that might improve your current way of delivering customer service. There is also a need to explore a skills gap and the need for enhanced staff training. So we recognized early on there are a lot of longstanding staff. There are also a lot of new staff, and when you see a combination of the two. There's often a need to bring people together and enhance training and come up with a training strategy that will support the municipality and position you for future growth in terms of how you will keep your services progressive as you grow. A big one that Como mentioned was evaluating levied county services. So these are, this would be an evaluation to see if there is duplication in terms of the services that Strathroy is providing versus what the county is providing. Do that cost-benefit analysis in terms of, are there different ways of providing services or opportunities to leverage a bit more county services if you are levied for it anyways. So this is an area we'd like to dig deeper into, because we see this as a real opportunity to at least better understand what the situation is. I think there's a lot of misinformation about which services are levied versus which ones are administered through a service level agreement. So providing council with that clarity, doing some analysis in that regard, specific to the areas and potential areas where the county could provide services. In terms of governance, we have touched upon this, but exploring opportunities to enhance trust and help define the unique roles and responsibilities of the council versus administration. And that will help support kind of the governance roles and the operational roles if there is trust and synergy and everyone is kind of rowing in the same direction. There's also an opportunity to strengthen community and staff engagement by improving transparency and creating more avenues for meaningful dialogue and participation, so that this speaks to that engagement strategy when we're talking about engaging the community. And there's also a need to enhance engagement within the team here at Strathroy-Caradoc as well. So to give you some sense, this would include things like looking at communication processes and building trust, opportunities to build trust between governance and administration, and then thinking about the next one, which is streamlining governance activities. So I know that council did not complain about the number of council meetings, because so many of them are happening out of necessity. And at the same time, I think there is fatigue associated with the volume of meetings. And everyone talks about burnout as kind of a catchphrase, but I think that's a real risk, both for council and for administration, who is churning out council agendas to support the increased volume of council meetings. So identifying some opportunities to streamline how that process is working, and looking to relieve some pressure on staff so that those resources could be redirected to some other work within the municipality or some other high pressure areas. Assessing the need for the development of a comprehensive corporate planning framework, or this is an integrated plan, we sometimes call it, where there's a need to plan for all the plans, essentially. So there's you have a master plan, or you have a strategic plan, or you have an operational plan, and this corporate planning framework brings all of those plans together and kind of marries them in a way that helps support your budget processes and helps support your operational planning, so that everyone is aware of the priorities for the year, and you can make some in-year adjustments, but it does set the stage and really support actioning on council's strategic plan, and also making good use of all of those corporate plans that the municipality has invested staff time and other resources in. There is also an opportunity to evaluate the need for the development of a comprehensive diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility strategy, and that would support both your team internally and staff as they grow in diversity, as well external stakeholders. There is an opportunity to assess the need for a comprehensive economic development strategy. So we know this is a new area for the municipality, and creating a strategy or a framework for your economic development officer to work within is likely worth exploring moving forward. There is also an opportunity to evaluate ways to enhance your annual operational and or departmental planning. So we know council has a strategic plan, and there is some semblance of an operational plan to support council's strategic plan, but really fine-tuning and exploring what that would look like in practice to make sure there's a stronger alignment between council's expectations and what staff are delivering on. So this gives you an opportunity to kind of track your own progress as you deliver on your strategic priorities, and as staff work hand in hand with council to operationalize your priorities. People and culture. So there is a need to consider what we call single points of failure in some departments where there may not be a backup position or a succession plan in place. Should someone, should there be attrition, or if someone is off for extended leave. An opportunity for performance management, that training piece that I spoke to earlier, and all of those generally get rolled into a human resources strategy. So we identified this as an opportunity for your consideration as the development of a comprehensive human resource strategy, and what the critical areas would be for consideration within that strategy. There is a need to evaluate organizational staffing levels to ensure alignment with council's priorities, as well as the departmental needs in terms of delivering on the priority set for their service areas. Along with this, there is an opportunity to identify ways to mitigate risk, particularly when thinking about how those services will change year over year to support growth. There is an opportunity to evaluate and optimize your organizational and functional structure, and we recognize that this is a critical part of the review that we are undertaking, but felt the need to include it here, recognizing that functional strategy has to align with growth and your expectations for the future of Strathroy-Caradoc. There's also an opportunity to explore the development of new and diverse communication channels that will really empower and enable staff, especially managers and frontline employees, to provide feedback and engage directly with leadership. So this is, kind of closing the communication gap between frontline and mid-level staff and their leaders. Just as we're looking at leadership and administration and council, this is down in the organization and up one level. There's an opportunity to explore the development of and implementation of organization-wide IT training. So we think there's a lot of pressure on your IT department for some basic service needs that could likely be addressed through some targeted and specific training. So taking a look at the capacity for executing and developing that training, as well as considering the costs associated with that, who should be delivering it. That's an area that we think would likely lead to some operational improvements within the IT department. In particular, as well, improve efficiency within department where those individuals or service areas are struggling with technology. And then if we jump into process and technology, Como spoke to a weakness related to standard operating procedures, and we did recognize this is an opportunity to identify where are those standard operating procedures missing, or kind of a lack of formal documented processes that support ongoing operations in the event of a service disruption or a staffing changeover. So this will help increase procedural consistency and transparency. It will also aid in training in the event that there is staff turnover. There's an opportunity to evaluate the need for an organization-wide IT strategic plan. So right now, our observation is the IT team is doing some great ad hoc work, and they're building out their services, and level of responsiveness is close to in line with what user expectations would be. But what an IT strategy looks at is it looks into the future. So, you know, how will you have to adjust your network and your staffing in order to accommodate the technology that is going to ensure that your services remain relevant well into the future? And then looking at a structured project management framework to ensure that the projects that you and your community are investing in are have the right level of oversight and the right expertise overseeing those projects to reduce risk for the municipality. Then if we took a look at the department-specific delivery opportunities, for building and planning, this was an area that we heard a lot about. So there is, we know that there is a vacancy in a leadership position within that department. So one opportunity is to explore the potential for short-term increased planning support from the county to accommodate some interim planning support needs. There's also an opportunity to enhance the customer experience of business owners, developers, and residents by considering ways to improve communication, clarity and access to information, and consistency in terms of how responses are dealt with, or how inquiries are dealt with, and ensuring that responses are consistent regardless of who you engage with within the department. There's also an opportunity to identify inefficiencies and modernize services within the current building inspection process and the technology that you're using to support it. In alignment with the opportunity for legal and legislative services that we'll get to in a minute, take a look at the municipality's current bylaws pertaining to building and planning, and explore whether the department has the capacity to revisit those and revise them and make sure that they align with council's goals and the community's goals, and also that the capacity exists to enforce them. Because it's one thing to draft up a bunch of bylaws, it's another thing to actually implement them in a way that supports growth and ensures that the municipality is indeed open for business. In terms of human resources, there are a number of policies and procedures that could use updating, and this is recognized by staff, and I think there's a capacity limitation associated with the volume of revisions that are needed to some of these policies, and I know great work has happened in recent years, but more work is needed. So looking at ways to support ensuring that your policies are up to date. When it comes to your people, it's important for retention that you have up-to-date policies, and it's also important from a council perspective and administration perspective to limit risk. We talked a bit about structured training and development, but we have identified that as belonging to the human resources team to address gaps in employee skills and training, and bringing forward to council the highest priority areas for training and development based on where you want to end up and the services that will be needed to support how quickly your community is growing. Exploring opportunities to strengthen support provided by HR to other service areas. So they do a great job engaging with kind of the services that are in town hall, and they're starting to spread their wings a bit and provide some HR service and expertise to police and fire, and there's likely an opportunity to lower risk and expand out that, offer out that expertise to some of your other service areas to alleviate some pressure on them so that they can redistribute some resources and create some efficiencies as well. Taking a look at things like insurance and disabilities claims requires a level of expertise that the HR team could be leveraged for. When it comes to finance, who also oversees IT, there is an opportunity to evaluate the merits of shifting from annual budgeting to multi-year budgeting. And I know through my research that this is something that came up this year, where council did start to explore multi-year budgeting. So we identified this as an opportunity to, kind of work with that integrated planning, work with the operational planning, think about that, all things all together, and what this would look like year over year is an opportunity to bring all of your services together, streamline how you are conducting your work, administering the budget, and help support staff at the same time. So we identified that as a great opportunity to think about strategic allocation of resources. For legal and legislative services, there's a need to develop a strategy and some mechanisms and processes to help facilitate the review of bylaws. Again, making sure, just like policies, that these remain relevant and effective, and are reviewed regularly. In terms of community services, there is an opportunity to review the current recreation programs and evaluate the cost delivery of programs in relation to program participation and community benefit. This will help identify whether there are any underperforming legacy type programs where uptake isn't great anymore because people, your users and participants, enjoy other programs as the community grows and as you're seeing some new faces in your community. So taking a look there. And fire services, evaluating the need and timing associated with the implementation of a composite model, perhaps even a day shift fire service. And by presenting these opportunities, it doesn't mean something is imminent. It doesn't mean that something will actually be validated through phase 3 and phase 4. That goes for all of these opportunities. Because I know for some other councils that we work with, when you're thinking about adding staff or thinking about changing fire services or looking at EMS or police services, they can be a little bit sensitive. So this is an area that we'd like to explore further so that council has the data that it needs to make an informed decision moving forward. There's also an opportunity to expand, to explore whether there's a need to expand the public education program within the fire service to help mitigate fires within the community and other fire-related emergencies. And then looking at the fire service structure, looking at capacity to ensure it aligns with future needs for growth, and considering the feasibility of integrating the fire department's assets into the overall corporate asset management planning that you have done some work in. So with that, I think there's a lot more to this report that we could go through, but again, we will assume that you've reviewed the report and you'll highlight for us if there's anything that requires some follow-up on our end. But we would like to get council's help really focusing in on what matters most to you. What do you perceive as being the closest, most closely aligned with how you see your community growing and how you envision the future of Strathroy-Caradoc. And essentially, we're thinking 5 to 7, recognizing that we will touch upon all of the opportunities in the final report, but really do a deep dive into what matters most to council. So with that, Your Worship, I'll turn things back to you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to your team. That was really comprehensive. You covered a lot of ground there. I'm going to turn it over to council for questions. Just as a matter of process, is it okay, because I haven't looked at this too, and I've got some circles around stuff, could you lump things under a common theme and say, look at those? I'll tell you what I did. I have 5 under the enterprise-wide, but what I did is I took things like service delivery. I said, okay, is there common? So I came up with 5 themes and lumped 2 or 3 things in there and say, could you look at those? So I don't have any questions. I understand, I just point out the one that it did, because I know council will have questions about county services, so I did notice I have that down as a separate ask, like evaluate county, levied county services, but that's mine. I'll turn it over to council and let's open it up for discussion. Once, twice. Councillor Pelkey, you're sold.
Right, thank you very much, Your Worship. If I could go to the project management piece, I was curious what, when I was reading it, what does a structured project management framework look like? Because I was having a bit of an issue with that. And I think, when I look at some of these issues, like the operational focus and the project management is, up until 4 years ago, we were an incredibly flat organization where there was a director and frontline operators, and that was pretty much it. And so then suddenly, all this workload gets rushed upon us, and we start piecing people together. So we're automatically always putting out fires rather than taking a look at the future. So I'm just curious what that would look like and how you would see that working within the staffing framework that we have, because I still think we're really flat. And I'm not sure how you get specifically the directors out of day-to-day operations when they're kind of needed there.
For sure. So there's a little bit to unpack there. The first piece is about the project management framework. So, with any of these opportunities, we're able to speak to a little bit more detail about what we heard. And in this case, we heard project management is something that staff recognize there's a need to focus on because of the level of expenditure that council is often investing in third parties to conduct the work. And what staff regret or wish they had more capacity to support is that these projects are being administered off the side of their desk. It's not a core focus for them, and they do worry about things slipping through the cracks. And so this is an opportunity to look at how projects are currently administered, what capacity exists to support those projects. Is there a way to kind of rework things or leverage technology to support the existing staffing complement in better administering projects or providing that project oversight, or exploring whether additional capacity is needed.
Any other questions? Councillor Palmer.
Just a follow-up to Councillor Pelkman's comment then, I feel like I've heard that there's project management software that gets used in corporations. I have no experience doing this at all. But is that sort of the thing that you would be looking at, whether, I guess it kind of goes with IT a little bit, whether there are some technology tools that we could be using that would make that more efficient? And then just to build on that, I have experience with CRMs, however, and I do think that they're a really good idea, and I'd be interested in looking at the exploration of that. Again, they're kind of technology things that I think that maybe we're a little bit behind on using technology for some efficiencies, and it can help communications too. If, like you say, if I get a call and I input it and then someone else gets a call, people don't have to tell their story over and over again, and there's no misconstrue about where things are at the end of the day. So I think those would be some really good areas that sort of combine technology with customer service.
I'll go with Councillor Wilsey, then Councillor Canis.
I was just looking at it, and I see like most of the opportunities, I can think 4 or 5 of them are all talking about IT and issues we have with IT, whether that's county levied, whether it's IT strategic plan, all of those things. But when we go down to the next page, and it's opportunities for departmental service and the IT department, there's nothing there about any opportunity to make that department better, at least on your opportunities. So I think there's a gap there. I think if a quarter of our first page talks about IT and then we talk about the IT department and there's nothing there, I think there's something there we could probably unpack a little bit more. whether that's county or something. The other part is when I look at the overview of the departmental, like those whole 15, that whole page of 15, just in general, that reads exactly like the wish list of the directors from last budget. Every director put all of those things forward last year to try to come through, and they were either withdrawn by the director or dropped by council, one of the two. So I think out of those, I just find it, I don't know what to think of that, but those 15 pretty much match the director's request that we brought up last year and didn't do anything with.
Councillor Kennis.
Just for understanding, what?
What, 15?
What
Sorry, Greg.
The 15 department.
15
The
departmental.
15 departmental opportunities. If you read
So
them.
21 to 35.
Yes.
Yeah, on page 12.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Kennis.
Yeah, I guess pretty much agreeing with every thing. I guess it just kind of came to me all of a sudden here that it's, I think technology and HR are probably, if you're looking at two areas, that those are the two sort of umbrella areas where everything seems to sit. And so I agree. I think technology, like a CRM type of model, I think I'm actually surprised that one doesn't exist already. And so I know in my work in the past, that was sort of the number one thing that allowed everybody to communicate with each other throughout the organization, that everybody was up to date on all of these things. And just HR, I think it all, goes back to succession planning, training, all of that stuff sort of falls under that HR umbrella. And so to me, those are I think a lot of, I'm starting to babble, but I think almost all of it, everything sort of flows from those two areas. So to me, those are the sort of the key pins to work from. So.
We'll go to the deputy mayor, then give Councillor Falcon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at slide number 6, where we have the overview of Strathroy-Caradoc services and the 8 silos or columns there. So I'm just wondering, in the final report, will there be any comment about, like, are the headers, for instance, building and planning, community services, are these the correct headers on each of the silos? And the things that appear underneath these are, in your opinion, are they correct? So just for instance, in finances, IT, network admin, and IT support, the last 3, is that an appropriate place to have that type of stuff? Or are we organizationally mixed up in how we're doing things?
I'll let Julie, but I'm going to suggest if you look on the slide 11, on page 11, bullet point 15, Deputy Mayor, I'll let Julie answer that question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Deputy Mayor and members of Council. So what you see on slide 6 is current state. Yeah. And what we have been hired to do is evaluate everything that's going on in terms of how you are delivering services, align it with where you want to go in terms of growth, and that could involve kind of different functional groupings and a reimagined organizational structure moving forward. So by saying that, I don't want anyone to get up in arms about reducing staffing positions, or that's not our focus. Our focus is to make sure that your functional structure can support the services that your municipality will require moving forward. So short answer is yes, there is as part of our phase 3 and phase 4 work, an opportunity to look at whether the departmental alignment, of finance and IT, or building and planning, and engineering and public works and building and planning, all of those things could maybe be shifted around to better support interdepartmental efficiencies and streamlined processes. So we do evaluate all of that when we are assessing what your medium-term and longer-term organizational structure will look like. Great question.
Councillor Brennan, your hand was
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report. Interesting reading. There's a great deal to digest here. It's a huge buffet. There's lots to pick at. I think one of the keys, I believe, would be under the areas of governance options, items 6 and 8. Consider streamlining governance activities, improving meeting efficiency for council, and exploring opportunities to enhance trust, and clearly define the unique roles and responsibilities of council administration. I think if we were to do this, council would gain more traction in implementing the strategic plan that we have just spent some time enacting. And were we to focus more at the governance level and provide leadership in those areas, I think that might go a long way to helping us deliver the services we need for the community. So that would be a task. I don't know exactly how we do it, whether we get an executive coach to kind of come in and assist us in how we set agendas and how we go about implementing strategic plans in an organized fashion over the next 2 years for the life of this council, but beyond that. But those are the ones that really caught my eye. I think that's something that would go a long way towards increasing the efficiency of this council and helping staff as well. And maybe we'd become more efficient. The other one also, it's just it's a tiny one, number 33, we just came out with a new fire service committee. And I think number 33, explore opportunities to expand public education programs for fire prevention to help mitigate increased fire and other fire-related emergencies. That would be actually right within, I think, some of the founding documents of that committee. So one strategy I would look for here would be to go through these 35 items and see if there's a way of allocating some of these to existing committees that we already have. And we might be able to get a couple of items off the table, and like number 33, if we can give that to the Fire Service Committee, well, now we're down to 34. And we can say that, you know, that's something for someone else to do. I just wonder if there's a way that we can allocate some of these in a way that might remove a couple so that we can focus. Anyway, that's me talking too much, but 6 and 8, I think, are the two in terms of the enterprise-wide service delivery improvement opportunities that I'd like to see us focus on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hippel has give her an opportunity.
Thank you. Through yourself. Much like Councillor Brennan said, this was an incredible read, and some was eye-opening, some wasn't. Some I felt like, I thought, oh, this is what we discussed quite a few years ago. Succession planning, I mean, that was huge. That was something that was brought up when I first came on about 6 years ago. And I remember thinking to myself that it was such an important piece, but at the time, there was a lot of departments that had, they were just inundated with other departments' jobs and such. So it's interesting because all of this is coming to fruition right now. But I do find, I thought for a while we were really streamlining things and that the alignment of our departments were good, but I feel like in the last while we've been kind of creating a bit of chaos and dumping things on departments that really weren't part of their department. So I think the functional structure is key. And succession planning, I mean, with, oh my gosh, that is incredibly important. And as we get bigger, and we are getting bigger, regardless if people want that or not, it happens, and we definitely need that for sure. Councillor Brennan totally got my number 6 and number 8 for governance, because I thought that was such a key thing, because I feel like sometimes there's just a disconnect, and I feel like having that connection would be much better for everyone sitting in this room and everyone sitting in this building. But I was impressed with how deep that you got, and the things that you came out with, they were almost like, right, oh yeah, that was it. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was thinking, but maybe it didn't come out. And I think as we get bigger and as our community grows, and the amalgamation piece, that was right on the money. I mean, regardless of, it's been what, 24 years, 23 years that we've been amalgamated, that is still such a huge pothole. And it's tough because it's definitely a fragmented relationship, and it's a big sore spot. So that's it for me.
Deputy Mayor, then I'm going to ask a question of the team.
So I'm just wondering, through you, Your Worship, there are a number of outstanding motions that have been made by this council that remain unfulfilled. And actually to the point that we've asked all of those to come back to us so that we can prioritize them and get that list down to something that's manageable. In reading the weaknesses and the 35 recommendations, a lot of those were coming back to me thinking, oh, we spoke about that, we motioned this, we've done this. Have you been made aware of those outstanding motions? And because I think that would provide you insight as to council has already asked for certain things. So it shows, you know, maybe we're heading down the right direction, maybe we're heading down the wrong direction, but there's all of these motions sitting there that I'm sure when somebody reads it, they're like, oh, there's clearly a pathway that this council was taking at the time they made the motion. So I just see that as critical information when looking at your recommendations. Because perhaps there's a whole bunch more motions we need to get rid of. Thanks.
So our deliverable tonight is to give some direction to this group to move ahead. And I think we should spend some time doing that. So my easy question is, I wrote down the term low-hanging fruit. We need some quick hits in this. Are there any that you see that could happen quickly, and it's low-hanging fruit, so we could take those off of
For
this?
sure. I think there are some big ones that came up, and I have that list that was raised by. There are some big ones that council brought forward. In terms of some low-hanging fruit, you know, a path to looking at a diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility plan. That's low-hanging fruit that supports an overarching HR strategy. And so it was raised by the mayor that a number of these are kind of grouped into themed buckets. So essentially there are some low-hanging fruit in each of these service areas. So when we think about, you know, exploring whether there's a need for an economic development strategy, we're going to look at your benchmark municipalities. We're going to look at your aspirational municipalities that we've chosen to research and compare Strathroy-Caradoc against. Touch base with staff, and you know, some of these could be no-brainers. So
You should share what we see as the.
yeah. So in terms of the big ones, the top one? There's actually a bit more than 4. So I think there's about.
We did have the discussion ahead of time too.
Well, I think
we already had a point of view on.
Yeah.
If you have a recommendation, or you think, I think this group would agree on number 5, evaluate levied county services. I think that's a low-hanging fruit in my mind, where this group would agree on that. But if you have some way to pass forward for us, that would be very helpful.
Yes, so council tonight largely validated what we thought were the most important opportunities to do a deeper dive in phases 3 and 4. We've expanded the list a little bit. So one is to look at those shared service opportunities with the county, evaluating, you know, what services you are currently levied for, and doing a cost-benefit analysis, thinking about, you know, whether there is an opportunity to augment how you're doing services or change up how you're delivering services. Governance did come up in terms of looking at ways to improve kind of how governance focuses on governance, and operations plans to support governance in your role. tech enablement, and ensuring that you are well positioned to modernize, get rid of those paper-based processes as you continue to grow. An HR strategy, and looking at kind of what the priority areas would be for that HR strategy to ensure that you have the people plan that you need to support growth and to help you meet your resident needs now and in the future. Customer service, of course. This was a big theme throughout our engagement, and a theme that emerged through the community's feedback as well. And within that community service, likely an opportunity to improve the building planning process in particular, so that it supports what we know Council's priority to be, which is to support development or responsibly grow. Project management support came up from Councillor Pelkman and speaks to a number of those types of opportunities where we know, adequate and dedicated resources may not be in place to support risk mitigation for council. And so looking at ways to kind of bring those to the surface so that they're top of mind for council, and you can evaluate them using some of our data and research. And then looking at functional alignment and speaking to Deputy Mayor's point about the number of outstanding motions. We are aware those outstanding motions are being compiled into a report to come back to council. We hope to look at that report as part of our phase 3 research and recognize that's a critical component of our work. But that speaks to that integrated planning, which again has a direct connection to governance and ensuring that there is role clarity and enhanced trust between the governing body and administration who's supporting your work. So those are our priorities, Your Worship.
No, and that's good, and I'll turn it over. Just one thing. So when you talk about service delivery, there's 4 sub-bullets, right? Plus, when you go on to building and planning, it talks about customer experience. So that's 5. All those 5 bullets could be thrown into the bucket, so we don't have to pick this bullet, this bullet. We could just say, team, go and work on customer service. Thank you, and I'll shut up.
No, Your Worship, it's a good point, because when you look at it, it essentially boils down to there's a governance layer of things that we need to look at to help the place from a governance perspective be more effective, efficient, and then there's a service delivery level, which is a combination of, yes, looking at the processes across certain key services, but also looking at that tech enablement, which is important as well. Because that's important not just in terms of improving the quality, and it's also important if there is a desire to keep the place lean, and there always is and should be in good public administration, keep the place as streamlined as possible. Putting those tech resources in to help our folks be more productive is going to be absolutely essential. And then I think the project management piece belongs in there as well. Because if you are going to look to expand, the tech that you use or enhance processes, those types of things, having folks who are either internally qualified to, structure and manage projects and conduct oversight themselves, and/or they're in a position to do that of, other third-party service providers that you're going to use to help you deliver on some of these things, I think is an important piece to have. And then the last piece, which underpins it all, is, and again, it goes to your ability to keep the place as streamlined and efficient as possible and as productive as possible is that HR strategy, and a strategy that addresses the entirety of an employee's life cycle, from that initial kind of point of contact that you might be thinking about joining the organization all the way through to that succession, and everything in between, including what are we doing to support our people in their career growth development, ensuring that they're always upskilling in a way that allows us to continue to deliver to the level of quality from a customer service perspective as needed. Because the one thing we observe is, it's a pretty lean operation when you look at it just in terms of the full-time staff. And of course, you always want to make sure that you continue to, deliver an administration that is lean and effective. a key part of doing that is not only how you attract and retain staff, how you develop them, but also what are you doing in terms of, you know, ensuring that there is cross training that happens, so that if somebody does leave a fairly lean organization, that doesn't unnecessarily disrupt service delivery any more than it needs to. All right, so it doesn't mean hiring more people, it means what are we doing with the existing capacity? And that often dovetails into the functional alignment, right? So if there's a better alignment of functions, that does allow for leveraging those resources, cross-training folks to make sure that you are able to kind of plug any holes that may come as a result. So I think if you look at those three buckets, they all kind of hang together too. They're mutually reinforcing. That's kind of where our heads were at.
I apologize, Councillor Pluckman, you had your hand up. Thank Councillor Derbyshire.
Yes, thank you. You know, one of the things that I had a couple of points written down here was around communication, and you talked about customer service, so I'm somewhat assuming that the dealing with complaints would be involved in that customer service, because there's communication after the fact and there's communication trying to get ahead of stuff. And I can remember many years ago, it's probably back around 1999, where they were talking about if the municipality was going to try and get information out, it needed to have one central point. Unfortunately, that one central point has become social media, because other medias have kind of disappeared from our ability to use, and it's fragmented. So I was just wondering if you're going to look at that external communication to see if there's ways we can be more effective, which in the end saves us time, because, you know, otherwise we're putting out fires that maybe we unnecessarily have to do. And I think too the CRM piece with the complaints, you know, oftentimes when we get the call, it's because after a staff member has dealt with it, and the resident didn't like the way that the staff member dealt with it, which I don't relish their position, because oftentimes they're in a position of having to give news that the person doesn't want to hear. So I recognize that, but you know, I think it's certainly true. Every department's doing it differently, and some departments are much better at it than others. And so I think having a standardized approach would be very, very helpful.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. It was well done. Through you to what bucket does economic development fall into? Because I do believe that is a massive piece moving forward that we really have underutilized our department in general. In, you know, like so I don't know what bucket that falls into here, where we kind of bring that to the forefront, but if we don't start utilizing that, it doesn't matter what other buckets we like, that one's going to be the driver. So
Separate bucket. Go ahead.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Derbyshire, it belongs in the service and process and service delivery bucket, to answer your question. So right now, the economic development function is supported by one individual, and that individual reports up through the CAO. So we do recognize that, and that is why it's presented here as an opportunity to explore enterprise-wide, is because it doesn't belong in a certain department right now, but we recognize there's likely a need to look at how that function has to change and grow over time to support council's strategic priorities and the community's priorities.
Yeah, Councillor Derbyshire.
So where does that fall in one of the 5 going forward? Like when we're supposed to pick 5 things that we're moving forward with, like is it, I don't want it to see one that's pushed off to the side just because it is only one lady, one department, and we're not really focused on kind of that. I just wondered where it fell into these top 5s. Like I guess I'm not really too sure as to what we're getting out of the 5. That's kind of where I'm a little bit at a loss, and who's included and what's included, and you know, so.
So we will be looking at service delivery across all functions to, you know, continue to explore opportunities to ensure that you're preparing for growth and are aware of what kind of changes may be needed to support growth within the community. So we'll look at the organization staffing levels, we'll look at the functional alignment, we'll look at the current ways that they are delivering services and whether that is appropriate and aligned with the community's expectations, and then again, future state for growth. So economic development is top of mind and is within that service delivery bucket that will form part of the final review.
Thank you.
Any other, go ahead. Anything else, Bo?
No, I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Woolsey.
I actually just thought I'd want to make sure that numbers 6 and 8 that Councillor Brennan and Kenneth talked about were on that. I find those two, I think, might actually solve a lot of the issues, including some of the reports that we're waiting on that are coming back from staff. The one thing that kind of spoke to me a lot about that is when you read the reports that are coming from staff, I think we need to define a little bit between governance and operations and how they work together. And the main reason about that is, as a councillor, I found that the reports I'm getting don't have all the details that I'm looking for. The rest of council may want different details, but the details I'm looking for aren't there, so I have to actually go into operations and do research and find out myself. I don't want to have to do that. I also find that a lot of the reports coming from staff are maybe encroaching on governance, where they're only giving us one option, or they have cherry-picked the information that's going into it so that it only supports their option. There's no opposing information. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it. There's only reason why we need to do that. And I feel that as an operational point, what staff should be doing is giving us the information so that we can decide, not making the decision and trying to tell us why to make that decision. So I feel that between the role of council and staff has been blurred, and we need to get that back again, where council is fully informed, where we're given options and all the information, not just partial information and reports. And I think if we had those reports coming forward, I believe the reports, I think there were 60 or 70 of them we're waiting on, we wouldn't need those because the information would be in the reports and they would have been full of information at the beginning. So I think 6 and 8 should definitely be on the list to review.
So in terms, I think, seeing no more questions, I know you need some direction, and I'll just tell council what and actually Council Derbyshire put economic development in its own bucket. And I came up with, so I'll just throw it out there so we can start a discussion if council doesn't mind. My economic development, I think shared services with the county is a separate bucket. That's one of the things we started. Governance as a bucket. Tech enablement, and I'm the HR strategy, and under that I also put the DEI component under there. Customer service, which included all the bullets, including bullet 22 on the departmental service. So anything, I'm just putting them in general buckets so we can talk about them. And then my last one was functional alignment as the last. So I'm just throwing those out there for councils for discussion. Those were kind of my thoughts, what I had. Councilor Palmer.
I would just add to the list the project management piece, because I think that risk mitigation is really important. And just looking back on some of the larger projects that have happened over the years and some of the difficulties that could have probably been alleviated with a project manager. So whether it's outside project manager, inside, or realignment, or using software, but I think that for risk and efficiency, we shouldn't forget project management.
Any other? Councilor Canis.
I just want to say, I mean, there's nothing on here that I looked at that said, you know, what planet are they coming from? And so everything here.
It's reassuring.
That's a vote of confidence.
Well, but it's all important. I think I think everything here is important. You know, whether that what bucket that necessarily fits in, I don't think is, well, maybe it is important. I guess where you start, but really, I mean, nothing here is as far as I'm concerned out of scope. So yeah.
Your worship, if we could just reinforce, like, everything will find its way to the final report. Some of these things will serve as, for lack of a better term, good initiatives under the future years of your strategy. In your strategy, you have like the two kind of date horizons. The there are things that you can tackle. I think with the 5 or 6 or 7, those are the meaty areas where, you know, there really is an opportunity to dive deep, do some more qualitative, but definitely more quantitative analysis to come back to help you understand how you, you know, what the investment level would look like, or what the impact of streamlining looks like, either in terms of real, you know, cost savings and or productivity savings that you can find. So none of this will go away, but we will take some of those things that are, you know, for lack of a better term, more you know, longer term initiatives in nature, you know, bucket those and then dive deep on the 6 or 7 areas. And your worship, I think maybe just with respect to the project management piece, maybe there is a bucket on risk management, because there are a few things in here that lend themselves to risk management, so of which project management would be one.
Councilor Derbyshire.
Sorry, through you to the strategy people. With building and planning being where we're at right now with what it is, the structure makeup and kind of how it looks, will that be something that's kind of focused on for us to give us maybe a direction of, we don't have to have it look the exact same way we did before? Here's 2 or 3 options that maybe better fit with the way you guys and the way the county, you know, kind of how we have that kind of done. So that will be something that comes in as the function, or as the, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Excuse me. I think you've hit all the notes, and the fact that council is, and I agree with Councilor Kennis, there isn't anything that's outside the scope, and you've done great work. If there's anything else, I don't see anything. Councilor Pelkman.
Just wanted to ask to do around economic development. Again, if I go back 8 years ago, we were looking at trying to sell off a very large piece of the north end, and I think when we talk about economic development, we usually are talking industrial. Suddenly we're out of land and our focus is very different. So I'm assuming you'd be, or maybe I shouldn't assume, would the direction be like, okay, we finished the plan that we had, where do we look next? Is that more or less what you're talking about in terms of putting a strategy together? Okay. Because I think we've had tremendous success in and you know, the one staff member that we've had has been doing tremendous work, and we're fortunate that we've had the growth that we've had.
Councilor Kennis.
I know you county guys are looking at like an economic development corporation too, so I think, you know, that.
Getting ahead of it.
Well, but I mean, the county's looking at one, right? So I mean, we're talking about integrated services. I mean, that's something that we have to keep in the back of our mind too, because depending on where you guys go with that, I assume an economic development corporation for the county means all of the counties. So including us. So yeah. So there's again duplication of expenses. Yeah, never makes a lot of sense. So.
Before I call for adjournment, I always pick up on the little things of the team and the community, and on page 7, the municipality is experiencing significant residential growth, which is reshaping, and I like that word, reshaping, its identity. This evolution challenges traditional labels as Strathroy-Caradoc transitions beyond a small town, a retirement community to embrace more complex, multifaceted identity. And I think that's what we're facing in this term of council and previous terms, is that that reshaping and that transition. It's affecting council staff, council community, staff in the community. So I picked up on that line, and that gives me some solace that there's a transition, but the transition always comes to an end at some point in time. And I just say that to the council, the staff, and the entire community, that we are undergoing change, and sometimes change is it's a little bit difficult at times. So appreciate all the work that you did, appreciate council all the time. For that, motion to adjourn at 6:24. Councilor Kennis, second by Councilor Derbyshire, all in favor, carried.